Sarah Mitchell never imagined that booking a routine commercial flight from Denver to Chicago would change her life forever. As a telecommunications engineer for a major corporation, she traveled frequently for work, treating flights like mobile offices where she could catch up on emails and review technical specifications. That Tuesday morning in March seemed no different from countless others. The Boeing 737 lifted off from Denver International Airport at 7:45 a.m., carrying 147 passengers and crew members into what appeared to be perfect flying weather. Sarah settled into seat 12A, her laptop already open, reviewing network infrastructure plans for a client presentation scheduled for later that afternoon. She had made this same route dozens of times, and the familiar hum of jet engines provided a comforting backdrop to her work. Captain James Rodriguez, a veteran pilot with over 15,000 flight hours, noticed the first irregularity about 45 minutes into the flight. The aircraft's primary navigation system began displaying intermittent error messages, something he had encountered only twice in his 20-year career. His co-pilot, First Officer Lisa Chen, ran through standard troubleshooting procedures while maintaining radio contact with air traffic control. What they didn't know was that a sophisticated cyber attack had infiltrated several commercial aviation systems across the Midwest. Foreign hackers had spent months studying vulnerabilities in aircraft communication networks, waiting for the perfect opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities. Their target wasn't random destruction, but rather a coordinated disruption that would expose critical weaknesses in American aviation infrastructure. Sarah first noticed something unusual when her laptop's wireless connection began behaving erratically. As someone who understood network systems intimately, she recognized patterns that didn't match typical airline Wi-Fi issues. The signal strength indicators were fluctuating in ways that suggested external interference rather than simple equipment malfunction. Her engineering instincts kicked in, and she began running diagnostic software she always kept on her computer for troubleshooting client networks. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Rodriguez was dealing with increasingly serious problems. The aircraft's GPS system had become unreliable, displaying conflicting position data that made navigation challenging. More concerning, their radio communications with air traffic control were experiencing significant interference, creating dangerous gaps in coordination with ground controllers. Air traffic control centers across Colorado, Nebraska, and Illinois were reporting similar issues with multiple aircraft simultaneously. Controllers watched helplessly as radar signatures became intermittent and radio communications deteriorated. The Federal Aviation Administration immediately activated emergency protocols, but the scope of the problem was unlike anything they had encountered before. Sarah's diagnostic software revealed something startling. The interference patterns affecting her laptop matched signatures she had seen during security assessments of corporate networks under cyber attack. The realization sent a chill down her spine as she understood the implications. Someone was actively targeting not just individual aircraft, but the entire regional aviation communication infrastructure. She debated whether to approach the flight attendants with her findings, knowing that passenger concerns about potential security threats were typically handled with standard, reassuring responses. However, her professional experience told her this situation was far more serious than routine technical difficulties. The attack patterns she was observing suggested a level of sophistication that posed genuine danger to flight safety. Captain Rodriguez made the decision to request priority landing clearance at the nearest suitable airport when his aircraft's backup navigation systems also began experiencing problems. Kansas City International Airport was approximately 200 miles southeast of their current position, but establishing a safe approach would require functional communication with air traffic control. The situation escalated when two F-16 Fighting Falcons from the 120th Fighter Squadron, based at Buckley Air Force Base, received scramble orders to investigate the communication disruptions affecting commercial aviation. Military radar had detected the anomalous patterns, and intelligence analysts suspected potential national security implications. Major Kevin Thompson and Captain Maria Santos climbed rapidly to intercept altitude, their fighter jets equipped with advanced communication systems designed to operate independently of civilian infrastructure. Their mission was to establish visual contact with affected aircraft and provide emergency communication relay if necessary. Sarah watched through her window as the two F-16s approached their commercial airliner, maintaining professional formation while conducting visual assessment of the aircraft's condition. She had never seen military interceptors this close to a passenger plane, and the sight reinforced her growing concern about the severity of their situation. The lead F-16 pilot attempted to establish radio contact with Captain Rodriguez using emergency frequencies, but the same interference affecting civilian communications was also disrupting military channels. Standard protocols called for hand signals and wing movements to communicate basic information, but the complexity of their situation required more sophisticated coordination. In desperation, Captain Rodriguez instructed his flight attendants to ask if any passengers had technical expertise that might help resolve their communication problems. When the announcement came over the intercom, Sarah immediately identified herself to the cabin crew, explaining her background in telecommunications and network security. Flight attendant Jennifer Walsh escorted Sarah to the cockpit, where Captain Rodriguez quickly briefed her on their situation. The aircraft's communication and navigation systems were experiencing coordinated interference that appeared deliberate rather than accidental. Sarah examined the cockpit's radio equipment and immediately recognized the attack signatures she had detected on her laptop. Working quickly, Sarah suggested modifications to the aircraft's communication frequencies and protocols that might bypass the interference. Her understanding of network security principles applied directly to radio communication systems, and she proposed using encrypted military frequencies to establish contact with the F-16 escorts. The breakthrough came when Sarah recommended a frequency hopping technique she had used to secure corporate networks against jamming attacks. By rapidly switching between different communication channels, they could potentially establish brief windows of clear contact with both air traffic control and the military interceptors. Major Thompson in the lead F-16 was surprised when his radio crackled to life with a clear transmission from the commercial aircraft. The voice wasn't Captain Rodriguez, but rather a calm female voice identifying herself as an engineering consultant working with the flight crew to restore communications. Her technical terminology and professional demeanor immediately impressed the military pilot. Sarah found herself serving as the primary communication link between the disabled airliner and its F-16 escorts. Her ability to rapidly adapt frequency settings and maintain clear channels made her invaluable to the coordination effort. The F-16 pilots began acknowledging her transmissions with respect typically reserved for air traffic controllers or military personnel. As the situation developed, Sarah's role evolved from passenger to crucial team member in what was becoming a complex emergency response. The F-16 pilots, recognizing her competence and critical contribution to flight safety, began addressing her with the call sign that would soon become legendary in aviation circles. When Major Thompson needed to relay urgent navigation information, he transmitted, "Eagle 1, this is Falcon Leader with updated coordinates." The call sign Eagle 1 traditionally belonged to the President of the United States when traveling aboard Air Force One. For military pilots to use this designation for a civilian passenger reflected both the gravity of their situation and their recognition of Sarah's essential role in maintaining flight safety. She had transformed from a routine business traveler into the vital communication hub, keeping 147 people alive. Sarah coordinated between the commercial pilot, air traffic control, and military escorts as they worked together to identify a safe landing approach despite the ongoing cyber attack. Her quick thinking and technical expertise had turned a potentially catastrophic situation into a manageable emergency, though none of them yet understood the full scope of the threat they were facing. The aircraft continued toward Kansas City International Airport with its unusual escort, while Sarah maintained constant radio watch, ensuring that critical flight information flowed between all parties. Her laptop continued displaying attack patterns that suggested this was only the beginning of a much larger operation targeting American aviation infrastructure. As they approached Kansas City, Sarah realized that landing safely would be only the first challenge. The cyber attack was still ongoing, potentially affecting other aircraft across the region, and her unique combination of technical skills and current position made her unexpectedly crucial to a developing national security crisis. The F-16 pilots continued to rely on her expertise, and she found herself wondering how a routine business trip had suddenly placed her at the center of what appeared to be an act of cyber warfare against the United States. The landing approach to Kansas City International Airport required precision that pushed everyone's skills to their limits. Sarah maintained constant communication between Captain Rodriguez, the F-16 escorts, and the airport's emergency response teams, while simultaneously monitoring the cyber attack patterns on her laptop. The interference was intensifying, suggesting that whoever was behind this operation was escalating their efforts. Airport emergency crews had positioned themselves along the runway, uncertain about the aircraft's actual condition since normal diagnostic telemetry was unreliable due to the ongoing attack. Fire trucks, ambulances, and specialized rescue equipment stood ready while Sarah coordinated the final approach communications that would bring 147 souls safely to the ground. Major Thompson in the lead F-16 provided visual confirmation of the aircraft's landing gear deployment and exterior condition, while Captain Santos maintained overwatch for any additional threats. Sarah relayed their observations to Captain Rodriguez, who was flying almost entirely on visual references since his instrument readings remained corrupted by the interference. The touchdown was flawless despite the challenging circumstances. Captain Rodriguez's experience and skill, combined with Sarah's communication coordination, brought the Boeing 737 safely to Kansas City's longest runway. Emergency vehicles followed the aircraft as it taxied to a secure area away from the main terminal, where federal investigators were already assembling. As passengers began deplaning, Sarah remained in the cockpit at the request of FBI agents who had arrived on scene. Special Agent Patricia Wells, a cybercrime specialist, needed immediate briefing on the technical aspects of what had occurred during the flight. Sarah's real-time observations of the attack patterns were crucial evidence for understanding the scope and sophistication of the operation. The debriefing revealed that the cyber attack was far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. Similar incidents were occurring across the continental United States, affecting not only commercial aviation but also air traffic control centers, military communication networks, and civilian emergency services. Sarah's documentation of the attack signatures provided investigators with their first detailed technical analysis of the hackers' methods. Agent Wells explained that Sarah's quick thinking had prevented what could have been a catastrophic aviation disaster. The attackers appeared to be testing their ability to disrupt critical infrastructure systems, possibly as preparation for a larger coordinated assault. Her improvised communication solutions had not only saved her flight but also provided valuable intelligence about the hackers' capabilities and limitations. The F-16 pilots were diverted to nearby Whiteman Air Force Base for debriefing with military intelligence officers. Major Thompson specifically requested that Sarah be included in their tactical assessment, acknowledging that her technical expertise and real-time experience during the incident made her insights invaluable for developing countermeasures. Sarah found herself transported to Whiteman Air Force Base in an official government vehicle, still wearing the business attire she had put on that morning for what was supposed to be a routine client presentation. The surreal nature of her situation was overwhelming, but her engineering background helped her focus on the technical challenges rather than the personal implications. The military debriefing room was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. Intelligence officers, cyber warfare specialists, and senior commanders gathered around a conference table loaded with secure communication equipment and classified briefing materials. Major Thompson and Captain Santos provided their tactical perspective while Sarah explained the technical vulnerabilities she had identified. Colonel Michael Harrison, the base commander, listened intently as Sarah described the attack patterns and the countermeasures she had improvised. Her ability to adapt civilian network security principles to aviation communication systems impressed the military professionals, who recognized that traditional defensive strategies were inadequate against this new type of threat. The briefing was interrupted by urgent reports of additional incidents across the Midwest. 3 more commercial flights were experiencing similar communication problems, and 2 air traffic control centers had lost contact with multiple aircraft simultaneously. The situation was developing into a national emergency that required immediate coordinated response. Sarah volunteered to assist with developing communication protocols that could help other affected aircraft establish contact with emergency responders. Her successful improvisation during the morning's incident provided a template for systematic countermeasures, but implementing them across multiple aircraft and control centers would require careful coordination. Working alongside Air Force communications specialists, Sarah helped design frequency hopping protocols that could be transmitted to civilian aircraft experiencing interference. The techniques she had discovered through trial and error became the foundation for emergency procedures that could potentially save hundreds of lives. The Eagle One call sign had spread throughout the military communication networks as word of Sarah's contribution reached other commands. Fighter pilots across the country were being briefed on the communication protocols she had developed, and her call sign became synonymous with the innovative thinking that was helping to counter the cyber attack. As afternoon turned to evening, Sarah worked with increasing urgency as reports indicated the attacks were spreading to international aviation routes. Or, aircraft approaching American airspace from Europe and Asia were experiencing similar interference, creating potential for mid-air collisions or navigational errors that could result in crashes over populated areas. The scope of her involvement expanded when the National Security Agency requested her assistance in analyzing the attack vectors. Her documentation of the interference patterns provided crucial intelligence about the hackers' technical methods and potential geographic locations. Sarah found herself contributing to a classified investigation that reached the highest levels of government. Colonel Harrison informed Sarah that her expertise was being requested by senior officials in Washington, D.C. The successful countermeasures she had developed needed to be implemented on a national scale, and her real-time experience with the attacks made her uniquely qualified to advise on defensive strategies. The F-16 pilots who had escorted her aircraft were reassigned to test the new communication protocols with other affected flights. Major Thompson remained in regular contact with Sarah throughout the evening, coordinating the implementation of her techniques with actual emergency situations occurring across the country. Sarah's laptop, which had initially detected the attack patterns, became a crucial piece of evidence in the federal investigation. Forensic specialists analyzed her recorded data to understand the hackers' capabilities and identify potential weaknesses in their systems. Her engineering software had accidentally captured details that sophisticated military equipment had missed. The transformation from passenger to national security asset was complete when Sarah received a secure phone call from the Pentagon. Senior military officials needed her immediate input on defensive measures being deployed to protect critical infrastructure beyond aviation. The techniques she had developed were applicable to other communication networks that were potentially vulnerable to similar attacks. As night fell over Kansas City, Sarah realized that her involvement in this crisis was far from over. The cyber attackers had demonstrated capabilities that threatened not only aviation safety, but the entire communication infrastructure of the United States. Her unique combination of technical skills and practical experience fighting the attacks made her an indispensable resource in the developing conflict. Major Thompson and Captain Santos were preparing for another mission, this time to escort a transatlantic flight experiencing severe interference over the Atlantic Ocean. They specifically requested that Sarah provide communication support for their mission, acknowledging that her Eagle One protocols had become essential tools for maintaining flight safety during the ongoing crisis. The evening briefing included classified information about the suspected origins of the attacks and the potential for escalation into broader cyber warfare. Sarah learned that her morning flight had been targeted not randomly, but specifically because of research her telecommunications company had been conducting for the Department of Defense. The revelation that she had been personally targeted by foreign hackers added a new dimension to her situation. Her company's work on secure military communication networks had apparently attracted hostile attention, and the attack on her flight was intended to demonstrate the vulnerabilities of American aviation systems while simultaneously eliminating a key technical expert. Sarah understood that her fight was no longer just about helping individual aircraft in distress, but about protecting the entire infrastructure that kept American society functioning. The call sign, Eagle One, had become her identity in a conflict she never expected to join, and the skills that had saved her flight were now crucial to defending her country. The Pentagon's Situation Room buzzed with activity, as Sarah Mitchell found herself seated alongside the nation's top military and intelligence officials. Less than 18 hours after boarding a routine commercial flight, she was now briefing the Joint Chiefs of Staff on cyber warfare countermeasures that could prevent a national catastrophe. General Patricia Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, listened intently as Sarah explained how the morning's attack had revealed critical vulnerabilities in the integration between civilian and military communication systems. The hackers had exploited gaps that traditional security assessments had missed, using commercial aviation as a testing ground for broader infrastructure attacks. The overnight intelligence analysis had confirmed Sarah's initial assessment about the sophistication of the cyber assault. Foreign actors had spent years mapping American communication networks, identifying choke points where coordinated attacks could paralyze transportation, emergency services, and military operations simultaneously. Her accidental real-time documentation of their methods provided the first comprehensive understanding of their capabilities. Secretary of Defense Robert Chen outlined the strategic implications of the ongoing crisis. Over 40 commercial flights had experienced interference during the past 24 hours, and the attacks were escalating in both frequency and intensity. International aviation authorities were considering closing American airspace entirely unless effective countermeasures could be implemented immediately. Sarah's Eagle 1 protocols had successfully guided 12 emergency landings during the night, preventing what intelligence analysts estimated could have been hundreds of casualties. Fighter pilots across the country were using her communication techniques to maintain contact with distressed aircraft, but the hackers were adapting their methods to counter her innovations. The situation reached a critical point when long-range radar detected multiple, unidentified aircraft approaching American airspace from the Pacific Ocean. The objects were flying in formation and maintaining radio silence, while simultaneously jamming communication systems along the West Coast. Military commanders faced the unprecedented challenge of coordinating defensive responses while under active cyber attack. Sarah worked frantically with Air Force communication specialists to develop enhanced protocols that could maintain military coordination despite the interference. Her civilian perspective on network security provided insights that complemented military doctrine, creating hybrid defensive strategies that neither civilian nor military experts could have developed independently. The breakthrough came when Sarah realized that the attackers were using American communication satellites against the United States. By hijacking satellite relay systems, the hackers could amplify their interference signals and coordinate attacks across vast geographic areas. Her solution involved temporarily isolating compromised satellites while rerouting critical communications through secure military channels. Major Thompson and Captain Santos were scrambled from Whiteman Air Force Base to intercept the mysterious Pacific aircraft, using Sarah's enhanced communication protocols to maintain contact with command authorities. Their mission was complicated by the realization that the approaching aircraft might be unmanned drones, designed to test American air defense responses under cyber attack conditions. The interception revealed that the unidentified aircraft were indeed sophisticated unmanned systems, apparently launched from a foreign naval vessel operating in international waters. The drones were equipped with powerful transmitters designed to overwhelm American communication networks while conducting reconnaissance of military installations along the Pacific coast. Sarah coordinated the defensive response from the Pentagon, using her understanding of network topology to predict where the next waves of cyber attacks would strike. Her ability to think like both a systems engineer and a hacker allowed her to anticipate the attackers' strategies and position countermeasures before critical infrastructure could be compromised. The conflict escalated when cyber attacks began targeting power grids, water treatment facilities, and financial networks in addition to transportation systems. Sarah's expertise in telecommunications infrastructure made her invaluable for understanding how seemingly separate systems were interconnected and vulnerable to coordinated assault. Working with teams from the National Security Agency, Sarah helped develop a comprehensive defense strategy that protected critical infrastructure while maintaining normal operations for civilian populations. Her practical experience fighting the attacks in real time provided crucial insights that theoretical security models had failed to anticipate. The Pentagon established a new Cyber Defense Coordination Center, with Sarah serving as senior technical advisor, a position created specifically to leverage her unique expertise. The Eagle 1 call sign became her official designation within the military command structure, recognizing her transformation from civilian passenger to essential national security asset. The international implications of the crisis became apparent when allied nations reported similar attacks on their infrastructure systems. NATO activated Article 5 for the first time in response to a cyber attack, and Sarah found herself advising multinational defense efforts to protect Western communication networks from coordinated assault. Major Thompson and Captain Santos were assigned as her permanent military liaisons, continuing their partnership that had begun during the morning's emergency. The three-person team became the nucleus of America's rapid response capability for cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, with Sarah's technical expertise supported by military coordination and tactical capabilities. The hackers' final gambit involved attempting to trigger a cascading failure across the entire American electrical grid by simultaneously attacking power generation facilities and transmission networks. Sarah's predictive models identified the attack pattern hours before it began, allowing defensive teams to isolate vulnerable systems and maintain power to critical facilities. The successful defense of the electrical grid marked the turning point in the conflict. Foreign intelligence agencies had underestimated American resilience and adaptability, particularly the ability of civilian and military experts to collaborate effectively under pressure. Sarah's civilian perspective had provided the creative problem-solving that traditional military doctrine couldn't achieve alone. As the immediate crisis subsided, Sarah was offered a permanent position with the Department of Defense as Director of Critical Infrastructure Security. Her journey from telecommunications engineer to national security expert reflected the evolving nature of modern warfare, where civilian expertise was often crucial for defending against sophisticated threats. The Eagle One protocols she had developed became standard procedures for emergency communication during cyber attacks. Her techniques were implemented across civilian and military networks, creating resilient systems that could maintain operations even under coordinated assault. Aviation safety improved dramatically as a result of her innovations. Major Thompson and Captain Santos received commendations for their role in developing new coordination procedures between civilian and military authorities during infrastructure attacks. Their partnership with Sarah had demonstrated the effectiveness of integrated response teams that combined different types of expertise and authority. The foreign naval vessel responsible for launching the drone attacks was eventually tracked and confronted by the U.S. Navy, leading to diplomatic negotiations that ended the immediate threat. However, the incident had revealed vulnerabilities that required ongoing attention and continuous innovation to address emerging cyber warfare capabilities. Sarah's new role involved traveling across the country to assess critical infrastructure and develop defensive strategies tailored to different types of facilities and systems. Her reputation as Eagle One opened doors with local authorities and private sector partners who recognized her expertise and trusted her judgment. The transformation was complete when Sarah testified before Congress about the need for integrated civilian-military cooperation in defending against cyber threats. Her personal experience during the crisis provided compelling evidence for new policies that better protected American infrastructure while maintaining the freedoms and openness that defined democratic society. Years later, the Eagle One incident became a case study taught in military academies and engineering schools around the world. Sarah's ability to adapt civilian network security principles to military communication systems had created new paradigms for defensive cooperation that influenced international security policies. The F-16 pilots who had first addressed her as Eagle One remained her colleagues and friends, continuing to work together on developing defensive strategies against evolving cyber threats. Their partnership had begun during a crisis, but evolved into a permanent collaboration that strengthened American national security. Sarah often reflected on how a routine business flight had changed her life completely. Her decision to speak up about the technical problems she had observed had led to saving hundreds of lives and defending critical infrastructure against sophisticated attacks. The call sign Eagle One had become synonymous with civilian expertise serving national security needs. The telecommunications company where Sarah had worked as an engineer eventually became a major Defense Department contractor, specializing in secure communication systems for critical infrastructure. Her experience during the crisis had provided insights that transformed the company's approach to security and earned them recognition as leaders in cyber defense technology. The legacy of that Tuesday morning in March continued to influence American security policy and international cooperation against cyber threats. Sarah's journey from passenger to Eagle One demonstrated that expertise could emerge from unexpected places, and that effective defense required collaboration between civilian and military professionals who brought different perspectives to complex problems.